Hey everyone. This time we are going to be looking at Mr. Do on the SNES. I'm going to be honest with you, this is kind of a lazy port. They didn't really do a whole lot with it. So I'd done a video on Mr. Do before, and I reviewed the Atari 2600 version. Mr. Do is an arcade game. It's a pretty good one. It's kind of like a Dig Dug clone. I think I remember saying that way more than I probably should have. But it's got an awful lot of similarities to Dig Dug. And yeah, if you told me this was actually made by Bandai Namco, I would have believed you. But it wasn't. It was made by Universal. And in the 90s, they decided to release an SNES version. And this is it. I'll give him this. It looks a lot more colorful, and it's a lot prettier than the Atari 2600 version. There's not really a whole lot going on with it, though. That's one of the big problems. They didn't really do too much with what they had. It does look really good. It plays really nice. You've got everything in here that you would be, expecting if you were a fan of Mr. Do. And that's kind of the problem. They just didn't do anything different with it. They just took the arcade game and ported it over without really, changing a whole lot. There is a versus mode, though, so that's kind of fun. If you have a friend that would want to play this with you, you can, do the versus mode. I did not have that, so I just tried out the versus mode as it was, which you can still play in the single-player mode. You just, nobody's controlling the, second player or anything like that. I will say this, I like the game, but I just don't understand why they ported it the way that they did and just chose not to really add anything to it. I guess I should explain a little bit more about what Mr. Do is. So you play as a clown, and you are fighting off weird monsters with your magical ball thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I still don't really understand why they decided to make you a clown, or why you're fighting off these monsters, why you have a weird magical ball thing, why you have to collect cherries, why there are these strange golden apples there. I don't really understand what the extra thing at the top of the screen is for. There's so much that I do not get with this game. But it's just like a mesmerizing mess. And I just really seem to like it quite a bit. But what I liked was the arcade version, and also like the Atari 2600 version, which did a pretty good job of porting over the arcade version. And they made it pretty simple. It was kind of fun to play. The problem with the SNES version is it's just the arcade port, and then they added in a 2-player mode and figured, okay, we got it, we're good now. And that just doesn't really work for me. I don't really get why they only did the arcade port and they didn't add anything else to it. It just seems very bizarre to me. And so, yeah, I don't really want to keep saying the same thing over and over again, so we'll just kind of move on from this. There are a bunch of sequels to Mr. Do. You've got Do Run Run, Mr. Do's Wild Ride, Mr. Do's Castle. I talked about these with the Atari 2600 one, but what I want to mention here with them is they could have easily put these on an SNES cartridge and just released the whole like Mr. Do weird trilogy thing on one Super Nintendo cartridge. But for some weird reason they didn't do that. And I'm not really sure why. Universal skipped the NES version, or the NES, entirely with Mr. Do, which I feel like they could have thrown the version that is on the SNES. They could have thrown that one onto the NES, and then put out like a larger compilation on the Super Nintendo. At least that's what I think they could have done. Maybe there were other issues with it. Maybe somebody else was doing stuff. I'm not really sure, and I couldn't find any information as to why it was released this way. So to kind of wrap things up, I don't really get why the SNES port exists, because it doesn't really do much. They didn't try to do anything new. They didn't really add enough to it to make it worth it. And it's fun, but it's really not as fun as it should have been. Anyway, guys, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you liked what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing. And all the other fun stuff that I guess I'm supposed to be saying at the end of a YouTube video. Talk to you guys later. Bye.